She creates noise. She creates noise. She's moving through the world with a powerful voice. She creates noise. She creates. She creates noise. She creates noise.
Hi, you're listening to Sarah Nagurney, and welcome to She Creates Noise, a new podcast spotlighting women who power the music industry, coming to you from New York City. Now, if you don't know me yet, here's a little background. I'm a songwriter, producer, manager, educator, and mentor. I've written platinum-selling songs, had tracks on Grammy-nominated records, and released music on both major and independent labels. I've been a jazz singer, a jingle singer, toured with big bands, and became a pop artist, and I performed at festivals across the U.S., Europe, and Asia. These days, I focus on writing with and developing young talent. In the coming weeks, I'll be pulling back the curtain on the music industry's female changemakers. Some are close friends, others I'm just getting to know, but all have reshaped the business in profound ways. My goal here is to help listeners better understand how the music business really works, and just how instrumental women behind the scenes have been. You'll hear from both sides of the desk: artists, producers, managers, label executives, lawyers, women making things happen, often without the spotlight on them. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Now let's dive in.
She creates noise.
Today's guest is Divinity Roxx, a celebrated bass player, composer, and mentor whose influence stretches across genres, generations, and stages worldwide. Best known for her role as bassist and musical director on Beyoncé's iconic tours from 2006 to 2011, Divinity brought undeniable power and presence to global arenas, helping redefine what it means to be a woman on stage in the world of live music. Before that, she toured with five-time Grammy-winning bassist Victor Wooten, and her own solo journey has been just as groundbreaking. A two-time Grammy nominee, Divinity has carved out a unique lane in family-focused music, creating albums that uplift and inspire while staying true to her deep musical roots. Her work extends far beyond the studio. She's written music for the Peter Rabbit franchise, co-created and performed the theme song for PBS Kids' Emmy-nominated Lila and the Loop, and she's seen her songs adapted into children's books by Scholastic. As a passionate mentor and advocate for equity in the music business, Divinity Roxx continues to elevate emerging voices and challenge outdated norms, reminding us all what it looks like to lead with both fire and heart.
She creates noise.
Today, I'm really happy to have Divinity Roxx on the podcast. Now, Divinity, you've had such a dynamic and interesting journey, from playing with Victor Wooten to being Beyoncé's bassist and musical director, and now creating Grammy-nominated children's music. Please tell us briefly about your journey.
First of all, thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited to be here.
Great.
When I think about my journey as a musician and artist, I have to start when I was a little girl. My mom always had music playing in the house, and I loved music growing up. It seemed to be able to touch me deeply and help me explore my feelings and my emotions. I think a lot of times the mistake we make is that children don't have deep emotions, but music was able to do that, and I wanted to participate in it. I had a music teacher who would come to our class. I remember in kindergarten, we would have music 3 or 4 times a week, and she would come to the class, and we'd all follow her to music room, and she'd play the piano, and we'd learn these beautiful songs. And so as I got older in elementary school, this music teacher asked who wanted to be in the chorus, and I joined the chorus. I wanted to sing. The band teacher came around who wanted to play an instrument. I wanted to play an instrument, and I started playing the clarinet. And, we had some really great opportunities as really young people. Really quick, funny story. I went to school with Duran from 112, the group 112. We were singing in the chorus together.
Wow.
As 3rd and 4th graders. Yes, very cool. And I was a part of this honor chorus, which was a group of somewhat elite students. We all came together and we would sing at the lighting of the Christmas tree, which was a big deal in Atlanta. As I was growing up, Riches used to light this Christmas tree every year, and they would air this on TV. And we would sing for the mayor, and we would go around and sing in all these places. And playing the clarinet was really important. I played the clarinet through middle school. I was first chair clarinet at one point. I really loved the clarinet. And around this time in middle school, rap became really important. And it became this way for young people to express themselves. And I was in love with rap music, and I wanted to do it because I loved writing, I loved reading, and I loved music. And rap seemed like the great place for me to be able to put it all together. So I started rapping when I was in middle school, and throughout high school, I started this hip hop group called Dat Bood. It was an acronym for Divinity and the Breakfast Unit. And I went off to college, to UC Berkeley, to study journalism. I wasn't thinking of pursuing a career in music, but at UC Berkeley, I picked up the bass guitar and fell in love with the bass and started writing raps and putting bass lines under them and teaching myself how to rap and play bass. And I dropped out of Berkeley, convinced my parents that I was going to take a year off to see what I could do in music. And that turned into me never going back to UC Berkeley. But my hip hop group started to become popular. We started opening up for groups like The Roots and all the really cool hip hop groups that would come in town. And I left the hip hop group and really started pursuing the bass guitar and a solo career. And that's how I jumped on tour with Victor Wooten.
She creates noise.
That's great. And I love that you started with the clarinet. What a cool instrument to start with.
Yes, yes.
What a great background to have. I want to get into all these things. I do want to talk, the children's music transition sounds like an interesting place to go, but I think your role as musical director in Beyoncé's all-woman band, as bass player and musical director, was extremely unusual and groundbreaking. How do you think that impacted representation for women in music on a broader scale?
You know, the impact, we still feel the impact of that all-female band that Beyoncé put together. And I had the honor of being one of the co-musical directors under the brilliant Kim Burse. For someone like Beyoncé to put together an all-female band, something that she had been wanting to do for a long time, because it was something she hadn't seen growing up. It opened the door for so many women and young girls to see what was possible. Over the years, I don't think we understood how impactful it would be and how it would reverberate throughout time what happened. And I'm not trying to just big us up as something that was so special. It really was that important. It really was. I met so many young women who are professional musicians today who talk about that band and going to that show, somebody taking them. I remember meeting this one woman whose aunt took her to the show. And her aunt was so excited to see Beyoncé, but she remembers looking up and saying, there are all women on the stage. There are women playing drums and guitar and horns, and she was just enamored with this idea that women could do this because she'd never seen it happen with her own eyes. And she grew up and became a musician.
She creates noise.
I meet people all the time who talk about how impactful it was. And it wasn't just impactful for women. It was also impactful for young men to see women in that role. Because I think sometimes young men grow up with this idea of what women can and can't do.
For sure.
And it was so important for Beyoncé to show the world what women could do when we all came together.
Yeah, I mean, I play around as doing some production stuff, and I remember coming up with some cool bass lines and having a guy say, wow, that's a good bass line for a woman. You know, what? You know, in the case, this was maybe 20 some odd years ago, but still, you know, it's you've helped change things so much. And Beyoncé, of course, for doing that.
Yeah, without her, none of it would have been possible.
Now, she had big auditions for that. She really reached far and wide, didn't she?
She did. It was a lot of fun. That's a great story, too.
I mean, please, you know, share. I mean, everyone wants to hear any fun stories about Beyoncé. If you have any, PG-rated.
Each one of us has an origin story, right? Everybody in that band has this great origin story and an audition story, how we all came to this audition. I was at the time touring off and on with Victor Wooten. Victor was a part of Bela Fleck in the Flecktones band. So whenever he wasn't touring with Bela, he would take his own group out, and I was a part of that group, and him and Bela were really busy. So we didn't go out very often. We only went out 2 or 3 times a year. And in between those times, I was playing in the clubs in Atlanta, the famous Yin Yang Cafe, the famous Apache Cafe. And I started hearing that she was holding auditions for an all-female band. I wasn't really that interested in going to the audition because I was really focused on being an artist myself. And I was starting to become popular and, having toured with Victor was great. And I was really writing my own music and putting my own bands together and doing that on the scene. Through a series of a bunch of friends and a bunch of encouragement, I went to the audition and I ended up booking the gig. And I'm glad I did.
She creates noise.
Fantastic. What a great experience. Now, your sound blends a lot of different sounds, funk, hip-hop, rock, and it's incredibly seamless. How did you develop your genre-defying voice, and who were the artists or experiences that helped you shape it?
I think growing up in Atlanta really helped shape my sound, who I am as an artist, how I present myself in the world. Atlanta's such a special city, and there were lots of incredibly diverse artists in Atlanta during the time where I was developing my musicianship. One of the first producer groups that I was involved with was a techno group called 100 Monkeys. And they produced my hip hop group. And we were blending techno music with hip hop, which was exciting and different for us. We always wanted to do what nobody else was doing. And I think that stayed with me. We would go out and see some really incredible bands. There was a punk band called Johnny Prophet. There was a rock band, Follow For Now. There was Joy, was an incredible artist that was doing her thing on the scene. Wild Peach. These are bands that nobody really heard of, but they were so influential and so different. Oh my God, Tommy Martin's group was really great. Tommy Martin is an incredible guitar player who has toured with everybody from Madonna. There was just all these local bands and groups, hip hop groups in Atlanta that were blending all these great sounds, and of course, having grown up listening to George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic and Bad Brains and, coming into our own as hip hop artists, of course, Bob Marley, and his message was always at the forefront of what we wanted to talk about and the love and the message we wanted to spread. We listened to Nirvana when they came out, Cypress Hill, Tribe Called Quest, Goody Mob, Outkast. There was just so much rich music. Mother's Finest. Nobody gives Mother's Finest the credit they deserve for being genre bending. So there was just so much music I grew up listening to, and I believe we are influenced by the things and the music we experience. And so when I began to write for myself, you can hear all of that.
So you were a sponge, you took all of this in, and then you came out with your own version. You've turned your compositions into children's books and TV themes, like the one for Lila in the Loop. How did you come to decide to focus on children's music? And what does storytelling mean to you across these different platforms?
Just like most things in my life, I follow my heart and I follow the path that is laid out before me. I'm able to recognize the path, and I'm so curious about just about everything that I will go down the rabbit hole out of curiosity. I always thought I would end up making kids music when I was done touring and exploring this adult world of music.
Why did you feel that? You don't have kids, I assume, right?
I don't have any children. I have 11 godchildren. I have a host of nieces and nephews. I'm the oldest of 10 grandkids, and I'm the oldest of 3 siblings. So I think that I've always had the responsibility of being this caretaker as the oldest, and I've always been held responsible for being an example in my family for the people who come after me. Music was always so influential for me that I wanted to share the passion and the love that I had for it with young people. Years and years and years ago, I had the opportunity to write a kid's song called I Could Be Anything for this hip hop label. And nothing really ever happened with the project. It was called MeWe. It's actually still up on Spotify and the streaming platforms. And this was in the late 90s. That it was something I always thought I would go back to. And so I think during the pandemic, a friend of mine called me and asked if I had some children's music to contribute to a program that Scholastic Inc., the great children's publisher, was putting together for a program in Texas for pre-K kids. And at the time I was studying production and composition at Berklee College of Music because I wanted to go back and get my degree after having dropped out of UC Berkeley. And so I thought it was so exciting, and I started writing music for this program, and I needed to write a bunch of songs really fast. And they accepted all of the music that I presented to them, and they wanted to turn 2 of the songs into books.
That's great.
Children's books.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I was really excited.
This is the silver lining of COVID, right? All these people did different things during COVID.
Yep. During COVID, you know, your calendar was clear and you had time to recenter and refocus yourself and your mission and to think about what it was you wanted to really do in the world and to follow that path and stay curious and not allow this thing to get you frustrated and depressed, right? So I was in here making all this great, joyful music, which made my household so joyful. My wife would come in and I'd be like, come in here and sing on this hook. And what do you think about this song? And we were jumping up and down, singing these kid songs. It was so much fun. And I knew I had these kids' books coming out, which I thought from a business perspective, wow, that's going to be kind of odd for everybody in 2021 to have these 2 kids' books come out of nowhere. And so I thought, well, why don't I make a full-length album? And I did. The album was called Ready, Set, Go. I wrote more songs and self-released it, and it was really well received. It actually got me my first Grammy nomination.
That's fantastic.
It's crazy.
And I've listened to some of the music, and it's so cool. I mean, this is the coolest kids' music I've ever heard.
Thank you. My niece and nephew do think I'm pretty cool.
She creates noise.
It's definitely, because I was like, well, I was thinking, is this her stuff, or is this his kids' music? Like, oh no, it's definitely kids' music, but it's very special. I was wondering how you wound up going towards children's music. It was just kind of an accident, which developed into something.
It was one of those divine accidents. You know, I think it was something that I had always thought I would do. I just thought I would do it later. You know how you have that thing, I'm going to do it later. I'll do it later. I'll do it later. And then the universe says, now is later. You know, tomorrow never comes. It's always today, right? So we always say we're going to do something tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. It just you know, it's one of those things.
Do you feel that you're thinking differently when you're approaching writing for young audiences?
Yes and no. You know, one of the things that people constantly say to me, and I never really thought about, was you don't talk down to the kids in your music. It wasn't a conscious choice. I was really just being myself. I think with the kids stuff, I do lean more towards the best versions of myself. I don't tend to explore some of the darker things about myself that I may explore in my adult music. You know, my last album, I'm Possible, was an album where it was deeply personal. I was going through some really tough things and I was exploring them on that album. I don't tend to do that with the kids' music. I tend to lean into some of the most positive teachings that my mom would encourage in me as a child. Really believing in myself, knowing that I have power in my mind and I can create my own circumstances, being the best version of myself. And I'm thinking about as I continue to make kids music, do I start really exploring some of the darker topics? And I think it really depends on the age I'm going for. I think 14 and 13-year-olds are starting to think about life a little bit differently than a 5-year-old, right? So if I'm writing music for a 5-year-old, I'm exploring things that I think tap into my 5-year-old self.
But it sounded very joyful, the things that I did hear.
Yeah, that's where I want to be.
I've written very little kids' music, and the one kids song I wrote, I'm very proud to say, wound up on an album with Carney Wilson and her father, Brian, in a duet album. So it's like, was weird. I wrote one kid song, and then I think I should write more children's music, maybe.
Yes, you should. Hey.
That'd probably be a good idea.
The world needs it, you know. The world needs it.
It is very optimistic. So I noticed mentorship and advocacy seems central to your mission. What gaps in the industry are you most passionate about addressing, especially for queer artists and artists of color? Do you see change happening, and what gives you hope for change?
I do see change happening. I see more artists taking their power back and taking their careers and their lives in their own hands and releasing the music they want to see in the world as opposed to releasing music that corporations want to see in the world. I think that there's still a lot of room to grow. There are plenty of gaps, especially when it comes to women and queer artists. I think there's still a lot of taboos around being a queer artist and being able to express yourself fully in an album. And when I think about the I'm Possible album, it was the first album that I really expressed and was able to express myself as a queer woman in the world. I also think as instrumentalists and musicians, there are so many opportunities for us to advocate for being women on the road, being women-led organizations, being women-led artists, independent artists, having resources, being able to fund your projects, finding partnerships with corporations that are looking to enhance and to build a presence for women-led organizations and engineers, producers, especially instrumentalists. I really have a special place in my heart for them because that's my background, and it's not easy being a woman on the road, and it's not easy being primarily an instrumentalist because you are the first to get cut, you're the least paid, nobody worries about you, nobody cares about you. You know, there are too many legendary musicians who find themselves in tough situations where they are having to create a GoFundMe when they have health issues or crises, or when they pass away and they can't bury themselves because people have taken advantage of them. And it's hard. And so I am a huge advocate for women musicians specifically.
She creates noise.
That makes sense. And yes, I could see there'd be very difficult being a woman on the road. I do notice some improvement in the world of women producers. I mean, I know that that's not represented on the charts, but I do think there are just a lot more women producers today. Would you agree with that?
I think there are a lot more women producers, and I think there are a lot more nonprofit organizations who are focused on women producers having access and opportunity in the music industry. Absolutely. And I think that, you know, because technology has evolved in such a way, there is more access for women to explore production. And so I'm really excited about last year we had Alicia on the ballot as a nominee for Best Producer, and that is pretty amazing. So we are getting more visibility, which is helpful because visibility is important. You don't see it, you don't know that it's possible. And also women engineers. There are just a lot of organizations that are focused on that. And I think that that's what we need in order to bring more visibility to that particular career.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the Annenberg study, I'm sure you're familiar with that, has not been as optimistic, but I know it's out there because I work with a lot more women producers than I ever did.
Yeah, I think that study just doesn't really explore women instrumentalists in the way that it can. And it's hard because there are so many women who identify as producer and instrumentalist, right? Like me, but I'm a bass player and I'm a producer and I'm a songwriter. But I can tour as a bass player. And there's a very small number of us, and I don't know if there are enough of us on the radar to be included in any mass study so that we can begin to advocate for these women. But I do believe that we are starting to see more women on stages. We're starting to see not only more all-female bands, but we're starting to see more co-ed bands, which I love this idea of seeing more women on stage, whether it be on TV, on tours, leading bands, fronting bands as musicians, and not just the singer in the band. I think it's extremely important. And playing non-traditional instruments. A lot of bass players fronting bands these days, and I love that.
Yeah, and actually this is something we should get whoever's in charge of the Annenberg study to bring into their study, because I have never seen women touring musicians. I think that would be a good thing for them to add. We'll make a note of it. So you're not only creating, but you're also mentoring and leading. What do you wish someone had told you at the start of your journey? And what are you trying to instill in young artists that you mentor?
Oh, that's a great question. I think one of the things I wish, we always say this, right? What do we wish somebody told us we were younger? However, would we have listened when we were younger? You know what I mean? Like, I tell young people stuff all the time and they're not listening. And I'm like, well, you know, I get it because I probably wouldn't have listened either. You can start over as many times as you want to. You can have as many lives and different lives as you want to. I don't think people express that enough in general. I don't care what career path you're on, what you're doing in life. You're podcasting now, right?
Totally new thing. Yeah, it was just
exactly.
checking it out.
You can do as many things as you can imagine you can do. Just do it. And it's not easy. The pivot is important. Pivoting, staying curious is important. I think that's something that I wish somebody would have said. I think naturally I'm so curious that I don't mind pivoting and exploring so many different things. I'm exploring all kinds of things right now that are not even music related. One of the things I wish somebody would have told me when I was young, my dad was really into computers. Like, we used to sit around and he used to get these computer magazines. And back then you had to code yourself, right? And basically we would just follow a bunch of zeros and ones and we would input them into a computer. And then we'd have this really cool game, right, that we could play. It wasn't that cool. There were no graphics or anything, just some silly little game we could play. My sister and I would sit in front of the computer all day. One of us would dictate and the other one would type zeros and ones and commas and zeros and, I wish somebody would have told me to stick with that. Stick with learning to code when I was a little girl, because now I'd probably be, gazillionaire coder doing something completely different.
But then we wouldn't have had you doing all this wonderful music.
I'm just kidding. But yeah. That's, for me, that's a personal thing. But I think it's important to understand that you can pivot and you can... Whatever you're doing right now, you don't have to be doing that in 10 years or 5 years or 3 years. You can continue to explore and grow and keep going no matter what anybody around you says or does.
Just work your ass off. Whatever it is you do.
You got to work your ass off. That's for sure.
Be the best you can. On a funner note.
Funner.
More fun. What's something we don't know about you? Is there something unlikely, surprising? It could be a Beyoncé fun thing that happened, or whatever, anything about whatever that you think is something that people go, wow. I mean, one of my people that was on was Madonna's roommate, for example. And that was like, wow, I never knew that. Another one was Bowie's buddy since they were quite young. And, so I've got funny stories.
Okay, I got one.
Not just funny, but cool or unexpected.
Yeah, this is a good one. I don't tell this story enough. Many people would remember years and years and years ago, Kanye West had this huge car accident, right? Where he had his jaw sewn shut. The night that happened, I was in the studio with Kanye, freestyling, and will.i.am. Me, Kanye, and will.i.am sitting around freestyling. We were working on a song together. I think we actually recorded something. Will probably has it.
Should dig that up.
Yeah. Oh man, I kind of remember. Yeah, it was really cool. And Kanye was going to get a choir to come into the studio. Something he was like, yeah, I'll get my choir to come in and sing on this record. Yeah, this is going to be super dope. I'll drop my verse tomorrow or this week. And the next day, Will called me and said, turn on the news. And he's like, Kanye was in this really, really, really bad accident.
And he couldn't come and sing because his jaw was wired closed.
And he, and from that, he had all these really profound revelations about his own life, where he took his artistry in his own hands and he became not only, he was already this incredible producer, but he became his own artist out of that traumatic accident. And shortly after, I was in LA exploring this writing. I was writing with will.i.am. I wrote with DJ Lethal. I was in the studio with a bunch of other people too. And we were recording this album. After that, I left LA, and shortly after that, I ended up joining Beyoncé on tour. And I saw Kanye at the World Music Awards with Grace Jones. I licked Grace Jones's face that day. Just have a picture of me licking Grace Jones's face.
Wow.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
I want to see that picture.
I have to pull it up. I've been thinking about posting it as a flashback Friday. You should see her look on her face. She's like, wow.
That's crazy. It's just been so cool and interesting to have you. Is there anything I left out? Something you definitely want to talk about that we didn't cover? Something you want to end with that you think is important for people to know? about you?
Yeah, go sign up for my email list at divyroxxkids.com or divinityroxx.com. I still make adult music. I just released a single called Be the One. It's a love song. And I'm still exploring writing music for adults. And I'm considering releasing another adult project. I just don't know when. I think I'll leave it at that.
Keep us posted on that. I will put up links to anything you would like on the podcast notes, and you'll let me know what to add.
Yes, thank you.
And it's really been so lovely having you. Thank you so much for making time and telling us your unique journey.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Talk soon.
She creates noise.
I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Heard City, the premier audio post-production company servicing the advertising, motion picture, and television industries right here in NYC. I'd also like to thank Ann Tello, aka XO Ann, for singing the She Creates Noise theme that I wrote. Thanks for listening to She Creates Noise. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and share. I want to thank the team here, Blair Reinley, Yelena Stavanovich, Emily Wilson, and the Master of Engineering and Grammy-winning Cooper Anderson. We'll see you next time.
She creates noise. She creates noise. She creates noise. We hear her voice. She creates noise.